Hi, I'm Michelle Sterling for Friends of Science Society. On August the 6th, 2024, there was a massive fire in Vancouver of a mass timber construction 6-story condo block. It was horrific. It was like having the Jasper wildfire on Collingwood and 41st. So you may wonder, what am I talking about when I say mass timber? Mass timber is a type of engineered wood, and we already use quite a lot of sort of engineered wood. So, OSB, the kind of chipboard that's all glued together, plywood, these are very useful ways to make use of what would otherwise be wasted wood. But the problem is, if you want to have big beams in a building, if your tree isn't big enough in diameter to cut a large plank or a beam, then what are you going to do? So the idea of mass timber, and of course this is a simplification, you can certainly look up the information online and learn much more about it, but the idea of mass timber is really that, I'm just going to use these little barbecue skewers as an example. Let's say you have, a few thin planks, and if you can put them all together with glue or resin or dowels of some kind, then all of a sudden you end up with a very nice, strong beam. And one of the benefits of mass timber compared to concrete and steel is that it's a bit more flexible, which can be quite useful in an area like British Columbia, which is a seismic zone and subject to earthquakes. So the problem, though, really, is that it's highly combustible. So this was a 6-story building, and there was a report that came out in June called the Mass Timber Roadmap. It was published by the Transition Accelerator charity, and you should read Parker Gallant's work on the Transition Accelerator. It's a charity that's never gotten a charitable donation, so it's kind of strange. But back to mass timber. So the report came out and it was promoting the idea of mass timber construction and requesting that laws would be relaxed, that insurance guidelines would be relaxed, that bylaw and zoning construction guidelines would be relaxed and modified to accommodate mass timber construction. And at the time, in the Vancouver City Council meeting in June, they actually debated this, and then they passed a motion that they would allow 18-story mass timber construction units. So the one that went up was only 6, and as you watch the video, you can see just how terrifying it was. I think 8 other homes were damaged, 1 other home was lost, a crane completely cartwheeled off its foundations. And part of the reason for that is that until the timber is covered with, drywall or some other flame retardant material, then you're really building what's called a crib in wildfire chat. So that means that you're building something that's kind of a lattice work of wood. And you can see in the images that I'm showing on screen here, you can see how this kind of crib arrangement, what it does is that when there's fire at the bottom, it gives it a path all the way up, and as the fire goes up, the heat rises and draws in more air, more oxygen, which enhances the conflagration, and it gets out of control very quickly. The other thing is that, of course, to glue all these pieces together and make them strong, most of the products are petroleum-based resins. And in these kinds of conditions, they're highly flammable. So, the green faction, which never seems to be able to make up its mind, like at one point they thought that wood pellets were renewable energy. Now they just hate wood pellets. At one time they wanted to just plant trees. Now they want to cut them down and turn them all into mass timber. You know, this presents now a risk to society if we're going to go full speed ahead on this as a low carbon solution, because the idea is that mass timber will replace concrete and steel, both of which are very carbon intensive in the manufacturing of them and use of them. And they're very hard or impossible to recycle. Well, steel you can, but you can't really drag it out of a building and make use of it. It's very expensive to try and recycle it. Whereas the idea is that with wood, yes, you can recycle it. And I guess, based on what we saw on August the 6th, you can recycle it into firewood, that's for sure. Maybe that's kind of a mean thing to say, but I really think we have to be very careful about the push for all these innovative ideas that are not well tested in the market. And in this case, the city of Vancouver was extremely lucky that that fire didn't get away, because you can see from these images how far the circumference was where debris was being lofted, and how many units had to come out to try and put that thing out. So, you know, the push for net zero is unnecessary. Ross McKittrick just did a report showing that if Canada met all of its climate targets, the global warming temperature would be reduced by 7 thousandths of a degree Celsius.